our detective. And our start line was between the two neon cones. We were coming out through this door into this little box before we crossed over our start line. And then our boundaries were these cones, and then you can see we have some cones that went underneath. And what that denoted, or what I was made sure competitors understood, is that this, like the railing and the feet were in play. However, I didn't go under there. There was nothing underneath it. So just the very front of these was in play. And then everything was in play all the way to the cones that we see, the tall cones that we see down at this other end. Now, in our detective, we had one exterior hide, and that hide was actually on this cart. Now, part of what I did when I set this was I put it all the way back here on the cart, all the way in the back, because I wanted it deeper. Dogs tend to cut straight across, handlers as well, and I wanted them to push in. And the way my airflow was working for me when I set this, and we saw this pretty consistently through the entire search, is that this hide, the plumes, were pushing especially this direction underneath, but we did have some moments where we had some nice odor also going that direction, both of which went underneath the ramps. So the purpose here was for the handlers and the dogs to understand to push into this space and work this. And I actually think one of the most fascinating things about this hide was toward the latter half of the search, we started having the dogs actually find it from up here on the top of the ramp, and then their handlers and the dogs would have to figure out how to get all the way back down and back to it to find it. They weren't finding it from down here toward the end of the search. They were finding it from up here and having to work their way back. Now, in addition to that, of course, as a detective search, we had an interior as well. And our interior was inside this building. Now, I did not have this door propped. This door stayed closed the entire time. It was up to handlers to navigate how they wanted to go through the door. They could do that either by opening and closing the door themselves, or they had the right to ask me and I would hold the door for them. It was on them how they wanted to do that. So we would go in. Most of the time they chose to open it for themselves. And as they came in, they had two rooms in here. There was, in this room specifically that we're standing in, we had two hides. One was a threshold, and it was right here. The other hide that we had in here, I actually crawled under these desks, and I put it, I'm gonna point, I put it all the way back here. So it was pretty deep. It was all the way back here for them to be able to get it. And this hide, knowing that, the odor was really interesting. Again, part of the theme that I had today was deep, right? So while some dogs could get it from out here, the majority of them got it either from the far end over here and then came under the desks this way, or they would get it from over here and work this way. Either way, they had to get a little bit deep to even recognize for the majority of them that there was a plume there, let alone finish the problem. So part of the theme, deep. Make sure you're not just skimming the surface, make sure you're actually getting into the search area. The rest of this room was blank. I didn't have anything else in this room. And then we would come through this door, or some teams chose to work this room first. And again, we had a semi-threshold because we had a hide right here. So it'd be dead in their face as they came through. Both of these rooms have different climates. So that room was cooler with more movement in the airflow. This one, while it sounds like there should be a lot of movement, and you can feel some movement, it's a lot muggier. It's a lot more stagnant, or I don't want to say stiller specifically, but like it's heavy. It's much heavier in this room. So this one was basically in their face as they came through. And then I had two others. There was three in this room total. The other two were talking to each other out here. So there was one here at the base of this, and then there was one, again, that concept of deep. I moved this out and I put it on the bottom all the way in the back in this corner, and then pushed it back in. Now these two were talking to each other here. However, they were not talking to each other here. The reason that's interesting is because a lot of times dogs would hit the corner and they would go to this table. When it comes to this one, they might recognize it out here, but they would lose it when they came up close because of the way this corner was interacting with the two plumes. This one, if the dogs didn't go, again, deep into the corner, they would cut right across it. I saw dogs over and over and over again just go right past it. However, the dogs that came in and hit around here could either turn back into it absolutely beautifully, or the dogs that came down this side heading straight into the corner hit this hard. This was a bam moment if you came into it from the right direction. Out here, it got kind of lost when they mixed, and they would get drawn into that table instead. There were no other hides in this room. Again, the rest of this room was empty. Well, there's items, but it was empty of odor. So those were the specific puzzles we had. Total, there were 6 hides between the exterior and interior. And again, my theme was deep. So remember, you want to get into your spaces. Make sure you hit your corners, make sure you push into spaces, don't cut things off, and you'll be successful. Happy hunting.